Okay, everybody, welcome to council meeting, June 8th. Appreciate you all coming to watch and participate. Once again, we're still working out technical bugs, so if anything interferes, we'll try to take care of it as quickly as possible. And again, I call out to the deputy mayor, if I get lost of the line, you please pick it up and I get back in, we can switch again. We're going to do roll call a little differently this time, and go from staff up so that most councillors will be on the main screens because of the way in which the software is configured. So we will start with some staff and move up towards council. Not meaning that in any hierarchical order, just that's how it's presented in front of me. So last but first, Laurie Bickford.
I'm here, Your Worship.
Thank you. Ron Kelly Spurls.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm here as well.
Mr. Todd Cole.
I'm here as well, Your Worship.
Matt Pride.
I'm here as well, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Fire Chief Sean Finney.
I'm here, Your Worship.
Thank you. Fire Chief Craig Bowser.
I'm here, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Assistant Treasurer Elizabeth Hartling.
I am here, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Assistant Clerk Becky Goodwin.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you.
Superintendent Public Works Robert McLean. Is not here. Are we anticipating him? Town Engineer Dwayne Acton, you're next. Can you answer that question as well?
I can, Your Worship, and no, he won't be attending this evening.
Okay.
I'm good to go.
You're here. Treasurer Mike Beal.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm here and ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Donna Beal.
Good evening, Your Worship. I'm here.
Thank you. CAO Mr. Burke.
Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council. I'm also here.
Councillor Finney, I understand he called in and will not be able to make it. He's feeling ill tonight. Councillor Finney, unless you're there. Okay, Councillor Finney is not available. Councillor Butcher.
I am here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Black.
I am here. Good evening, everyone.
Councillor O'Neill.
I'm here, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
I'm here, ready, willing, and able.
Councillor Michaud, can you top that?
No, sorry, I can't. I'm just here, and thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Tower. Councillor Tower was on earlier. Councillor Tower, are you?
I am here. I am here, Your Worship, and I'm ready to rock and roll.
All right. Deputy Mayor Aiken.
I'm here, Your Worship, ready to go.
Thank you. And myself, the mayor, is also present here. So we have done a roll call. What I'd like to call the meeting to order, but just before we move on from that, I would like to make a short statement, if I could, folks, because this has been a particularly overwhelming week for many people. It's the world seems rather relentless and unforgiving in the last little while. While we've been faced with a pandemic, racial matters and other complex issues such as climate change, racial matters have been raised over the last few weeks. They're far different than what other issues we've been dealing with, and they seem to become a defining moment for our country. It's no longer enough to simply say that we value diversity and inclusion. Each of us needs to listen closely, and be true to our actions and our words on these topics. As mayor, I can't say that I understand what it's like to be subjected to systemic racism. I don't know what it's like. Most of us don't know what it's like. But I do know that systemic anti-Black as well as anti-Indigenous racism lives in Canada. And unfortunately, it's also present in Sackville. So now is the time for each of us to come together in support of basic human and civil rights. What I can say is that we unmistakably condemn racism, violence, and discrimination of any kind. I want our Black and Indigenous colleagues, residents, and communities across this province and this country to know that we here stand in solidarity with you in the fight to defeat racism. Thank you for that opportunity. If any councillor wishes to weigh in on that topic, please let me know and I'll give you the mic.
Councillor Evans here. I'd like to make a statement echoing what you said. I participated in Wednesday's silent vigil at the post office, and I was delighted to see hundreds of Sackville residents masked and physically separated, but united in their protest against racism. It was yet another reason why I'm proud of our community. But I just want to make the point that while we have all seen examples of active individual racism, there is also systemic racism. People who would never consider themselves racist can, without knowing it or intending it, be racist, and even more likely be part of and beneficiaries of systemic racism. We need to educate ourselves about this reality and its history, remove the blinkers of our white privilege, and commit to doing whatever we can to call out and eliminate this centuries-old scourge wherever it exists. And that starts with acknowledging its existence. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Hearing no one else, we will look for a approval of the agenda. We've all had the opportunity to look at the agenda for a few days. Is there a motion of approval?
Deputy Mayor Aiken, I'll make that motion.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Councillor Joyce O'Neill seconds it.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 3 is disclosure of interest. Does anybody on council or staff have an interest to disclose? I would like to note that I understand that one of the staff members may click off of this. This is going to be our first opportunity here for a conflict of interest in a virtual meeting. So one of the staff may click off, leave the meeting, and if that is the case, the CAO or one of the other people will text her to come back in, and we will see that person rejoin us at that time. So thank you. No other disclosures of interest. We move to minutes. Regular council meeting, May 4th, 2020, page 3 of your package.
Councillor Evans, I move the adoption of these minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Seconded by whom?
Councillor
Deputy Mayor-
Butcher, I'll second it.
Councillor Butcher, thank you. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Special meeting of May 6, 2020, page 10 in your package.
Councillor Evans, I move the adoption of these minutes as well.
You, Councillor Evans, seconder.
Councillor O'Neill, I'll second that.
Question?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. And finally, the special meeting of council on June the 1st, which is in page 12 of your package.
Councillor Tower, I move we accept those minutes.
Thank you. Seconder to the
Deputy Mayor
motion,
Aiken, I'll second those.
Deputy Mayor Aiken, thank you. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried too. Business arising from the minutes. I think everything that I have seen is covered in our agenda. Is there anything from anyone else that they feel is business arising? Hearing none, we move to Southeast Regional Services Commission. Another virtual meeting, and this did take place. It was a combination of the annual general meeting for the board and a regular meeting thereafter, but for the board. There was a couple of interesting elements of the AGM, which of course is for last year, prior to the pandemic. And there was a significant surplus in terms of particularly for capital and the ability to sell some of the power. But there is also a total of $13 million in debt owed as well, which is planned debt mostly because of the waste system. The idea was that all directors would continue until the next election, as all of the directors are local government officials. They had been their term extended, as you know, so the directors of the board were asked to stay on, the same as they were in their political office, and all agreed. And similarly, all of the committees were also extended from the previous membership. That was found all was well and good. Financial statements adopted, and the meeting was adjourned. The AGM was adjourned. We then went into the regular meeting, and the funds were, at this point in the year, were all doing okay. There was one item that stood out, and that was because we made full payment on the first quarter of the year. So it showed up in the financial reports as being way over budget, but it was really that we had committed to put that money out to rural rides right at the beginning of the year for rural ride support. So that while it shows up in the reports as a sore thumb, it was actually planned. The question was asked by myself, actually, about how the board intended to address the potential uncertainty of next year's financial context for the members. All of the local governments would have probably got some uncertainty about their revenues and expenditures next year, and the point was made, and the reply was they're well aware of the situation, and as they move into budgeting, there will not be any attempt to increase anything significantly in any manner, and try to be fully aware of what the financial situation of the municipality members will look like. Interestingly enough, planning's report showed that there was surprising values in assessed values this year so far in southeast New Brunswick. And the good news of that would be that that may be much more of a surprise than we might have anticipated under the pandemic and the lessened economy we had. So the suggestion is if that continues, we won't be as bad as we thought, at least some of us. A whole bunch of tenders were approved, almost all of them for the waste system. Actually, I think they all were. And some of them are because of the international trade problems that there has become some issues with getting some of these at a reasonable price. And one of them was a garbage compactor replacement. And so while there were a couple that were a bit higher than anticipated, most of them were within a manageable amount, and the board felt that all of them could be managed within the cash flows. There was an interesting discussion that rural plans have to be submitted, as you know, for LSDs without political representation. They get submitted to the province, and the province rejected an initial rural plan for part of the area. And additional discussions between the planning staff and the minister resulted in a better clarification and a better understanding. And we understand that now they are prepared to approve that rural plan. But it goes back to that idea of the province being the mayors for along unincorporated areas and not really understanding that all of the unincorporated areas had been part of that rural planning process and supported it, and being out of that touch of that they rejected it for long-standing provincial viewpoints. So for those of you who have been watching some of the webinars on the future of the province, that is a huge question for us moving forward, and I thought that illustrated it quite well. Looking to rename Bill Slater Drive to Ecoway 360, that also was rejected by the province, and again, that is also being looked at as another appeal. And we also approved a new member from Shediac to that PRAC of that area. So that's it. If there's any more specific questions, I'll try to answer them. If not, I don't see any hands. See lots of quizzical faces. Oh, Councillor Michaud, please.
Thank you, Worship. Just regards to the shutdown at Eco 360, I guess, and the recycling and the composting, and just want to know if there's been anything further on that. I know at one point in time they had indicated through social media that they were actually going to hold the blue bags and recycle them at some point in time. But I believe they all went to landfill. Can we just get some clarification maybe on that? Were they planning on going back, or is it just anything from this point forward?
I can't give you a definitive. My understanding was it's from this point forward, but we will make sure that we get that clear. So thanks for that, Councillor Michaud, because there was some uncertainty of what was happening with the recycling during that period of time. And all we heard was that going forward, we're back to the same practices, but we didn't get that specific statement. We got that we have returned to those practices as before. But we'll make a note and I will follow up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Worship, Deputy Mayor Aiken here. I think the normal practice was supposed to resume on June 1st. And so they're doing the full separation now. And our first Eco Depot in Sackville is going to be on August 19th and 20th.
Good, thank you for that. Those were all halted as well under the pandemic, and now we're trying to catch up on that. Okay, I've got a note for that, Councillor Michaud. We'll make sure we follow up on that. Unless, of course, we can move to the next item of planning. Ms. Bickford, would you like to give your report, please?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. In the month of May, there were 5 permits issued at bringing our construction value to a total of 15. I will note in the report that the chart actually reflects April. I will say, though, that that was an error and it is actually May's numbers that were reported there. This time last year, we had 26 permits issued at 1.7 million. The discrepancy is a number of larger commercial projects that we had received this time last year. This year so far, many of the projects that we are seeing, not only in Sackville, but also throughout the Southeast, are smaller projects, more accessory buildings, decks, and that sort of nature. In the month of May, the Southeast Regional Service Commission, PRAC, did meet virtually. However, there were no approvals or recommendations for the town of Sackville during that meeting, so there was nothing to report on that. Just another couple highlights that we had over the month. Staff did meet with town staff to discuss sidewalk cafes and their operation during the 2020 summer. We will note that one cafe is in operation now. They have resubmitted the renewal form. That's Joey's, so it's up and running. And the other thing I want to point out is that the Southeast has modified their application process on the website now. So if you go on to the nbse.ca website and under planning permits and applications, you can actually obtain a modifiable application online. As well as there's another tool on there as well, just more of a general inquiry online. A scenario where people can go in, start to fill out a preliminary request, and then it gets directed back to the appropriate staff members. And that concludes my report.
Any questions on the report from council?
Your Worship, Councillor Michaud here.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just wondering, just in regards to those discussions on the sidewalk cafes, was there anything specifically spoken about in regards to operation-wise and social distancing, or anything in regards to the possibility of providing kind of additional space for somebody that might be looking for that in order to accommodate that? I'm just kind of wondering what type of discussion happened, or if there's anything kind of going forward on that.
Yeah, we have nothing to bring forward at this point, but it was more of a general discussion, first identifying, what kind of spaces are we talking about under the existing operating procedures. So, certain things like requirements that we have currently are there has to be a 5-foot unobstructed pathway to remain for pedestrians moving up and down the sidewalks. And then it moved on to just general discussions of, is there things that we could be doing to try to improve given the situations this year with, COVID restrictions and the implications that might have on individual businesses as well. So, but there's nothing to bring forward to council to ask for any kind of clarification on.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the report? Okay. Okay. We shall move to item number 7, which is a proclamation, timely one that I will read here. As you may have noticed, the Drew flag is flying today. Whereas in New Brunswick, we value and respect those individuals requiring care and services provided in a nursing home environment. And whereas we believe it is important that all nursing home residents have the opportunity to enjoy the best quality of life possible. And whereas nursing homes across the province have a long and proud history of caring for residents in need of professional nursing care. And whereas these nursing homes provide meaningful employment to New Brunswickers in professional and support roles. And whereas the boards of directors, management, and staff are committed to compassionate and high-quality care for their residents, therefore I, John Hyam, Mayor of the Town of Sackville, do hereby declare June 7 to 13, 2020 as New Brunswick Nursing Home Week in the Town of Sackville. We thank you for that. We are now moved to Mayor's report. I have a larger report that I left on my office desk, so I will just give you some highlights of what I have recalled. Lots of media coverage in the last month. We're on CBC Shift, regional provincial-wide radio show. Some of you may have saw that we've been in front of line of the Globe and Mail regarding how the town was dealing with COVID and the university opening, et cetera. All three papers in Moncton, St. John, and Fredericton published my commentary on the opportunities that the province has if they learn from COVID. So we had quite a bit of media coverage. On top of that, I sat on the International Town and Gown Association panel where we discussed the COVID task force and particularly the role of communications in a volunteer force trying to respond from a volunteer base to the pandemic in this area. And it was an interesting chat, by far the smallest community, by far the smallest university, and an unusual, the only Canadian entry. So there was some education of just even our context of the Constitution here and what our responsibilities were as local government and what volunteers were doing in terms of the COVID task force. The COVID task force, another item that keeps meeting every week. There's now an expanding group of action groups that are working on the highest priorities that the COVID task force identifies. So that is continuing to go. And did have a meeting of the hospital steering committee to ask the question about whether the time was right for the committee to re-engage. As you recall, it decided it should step down for a while when the pandemic hit. And given the variety of activities that people were seeing going on and multiple calls for the way in which the province should be reconsidering some of its services post-COVID, they agreed that this was the time to move. So at this point, we were, those of us who participated were assigned a couple of quick tasks in terms of getting their networks and some data together. And the committee will virtually meet in the near future to decide what it wishes to take in first steps. So those are the main items that I will follow up with my mayor's report in more detail and circulate it to you later this evening or first thing tomorrow. But any questions on what I do recall that I had written down?
Councillor Evans here. First of all, I just want to commend you on your extemporaneous report. It was pretty impressive to do it from memory. I'm delighted to hear that you're, or that the hospital steering committee is getting back in action. I had a couple of conversations recently from people, and it was hard to believe it was just 3 months ago that we were out, lobbying publicly, having that big demonstration at the hospital. It seems like years, but healthcare has never been more important. So I'm really pleased that we're going to get back in action and hope we get some results.
Thanks. And I think that for those who have been following that Turning Point NB, which is a business group in the province, has been sponsoring what they call a variety of webinars on these topics. They do not discuss health, but almost every one of their topics, health is embedded in the questions over how this province should rearrange its structures, its approach, its policies and practices. Biggest single item in the budget is health. Biggest single item in attracting people, health. The biggest single item that is most contentious, health. So it really does have to be fleshed out, and I think that's what the hospital committee saw. This is an opportunity. Everybody's talking about it. They realize some of the things that were said earlier may not be based in fact, and now is the time to come up with some alternative suggestions. Okay. So, no other questions? I'm sorry I don't have it all. I did actually mean to get it to you beforehand as well and didn't do that. So 2 strikes, 1 more, and I'm out of here. So we move on to the CAO report. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. My report appears on page 17 of the package, and I'll just take a few minutes to highlight a few points. So I think it's obvious in the various departmental reports that it's been another busy month for the organization with the COVID-19 pandemic, that as we try to get back to a new normal, we're adjusting practices, I guess, and trying to stay on top of the state of emergency from the province. His Worship mentioned the Tantramar COVID-19 task force, and I guess I've been fortunate to sit in on those meetings every Saturday for an hour. So I've really enjoyed the updates on the variety of communications, mental health, food security, economic recovery, etc. There's an incredible amount of work being done out there by volunteers. So fortunately, our workforce is remaining healthy, and again, just want to commemorate the entire team, I guess, for their dedication during these kind of surreal times. I think that we're all now starting to get accustomed to. So a few specific updates. I've been asked to join my colleagues in Ross Aora, Muckville, Riverview, Woodstock, and Quispamsis, the CAOs of those communities, sorry, and on the creation of a kind of a small city, big town community of practice where we've really been using some setting aside dedicated amount of time each week to really just share ideas as we work through the pandemic and economic recovery and just operational changes from facility changes to summer students as examples. So that's been really beneficial and useful. So this last week, I also had the opportunity to sit down with the CAOs of Antigonish and Wolfville and really focus on university community relations. So that was also a very productive hour of the day, where we're now going to look to bring in the student services representatives from the 3 universities to join us, just as we kind of strategize about not just student recruitment and retention, but also ensuring that the safe return of students to our communities in the fall. So that's also been a new partnership, I guess, that's recently developed. So there's been lots of disappointing cancellations. I think we feel that and see that across not just our community, but other communities and across the country for that matter. So it's hard to replace Fall Fair, the Chalk Festival, Sappy Fest, the fire department truck draw. These are all real essential activities in our community. But I don't want to steal the show from all the good and innovative work that's being done across our organization, which I know is going to be highlighted in the various reports underway this evening. So despite it being difficult times, I know it's our staff are working hard to deliver the best possible services to our residents, and it's showing. So it's shaping up to be another busy summer. Your Worship and Council, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Mr. Burke, is it firm enough yet that we should talk about the university and town cooperation on the COVID measures at this point?
Yeah, certainly, Your Worship, we can do that. I guess we're just, you'll have noticed that you've received a kind of a tentative date from the clerk's office, so we're just waiting to confirm a few things, but we're hopeful that the meeting will be scheduled for a week from today, so June the 15th. So again, that's just tentative at the moment, but we'll be looking to confirm that as early as tomorrow. So What we thought we would do is we would take an evening to highlight a variety of items. One of which is, I guess, the strategic work that's underway with the university on student retention, recruitment, but also, as I said earlier, ensuring the safe arrival of students to our community, self-isolation, what does that look like? And a lot of those plans are under development, but I think it's important for the community to know that the senior administration at the town and university are working hand in hand on this too, because it's important. And we know it's important for the university, it's important for our town, but also for our local business community as well. So we will have a senior representation from the university at the meeting. And again, we're working out those details now. It will be a virtual meeting, so there's some logistical challenges, as you all know, to make that happen. But we're also going to use it as an opportunity to give an update to council and the community on what's being done, what's underway, what regional efforts are underway, what local efforts are underway. We've already mentioned the COVID-19 task force. There's also work underway by the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce. And there's work underway by our very own town and business community on just ways to energize the downtown. It's just one example. So we also thought we used the meeting as an opportunity to highlight what's being done so that people know that there is dedicated resources being allocated for the current situation. And then in addition to that, we also thought it would be an appropriate time to provide a financial update to council and the public on where we are as a municipality 3 months into the pandemic. So Mr. Beal's been actively working away to kind of prepare for that part of the meeting. And then lastly, I guess we as a group and council will have to decide on, is there a need or opportunity there for some type of economic recovery fund, which we've talked about previously. So this will be an opportunity for staff to give you some options within the current operational budget, and then allow us to kind of get our marching orders from council and determine what other work needs to be done. But we figured this was an appropriate time. There's lots of great conversations happening with the university, with the student administration as well, and the special council meeting would be a great opportunity to do that.
So thank you for Mr. Burke. So it is planning to be a special meeting of council. It will be a virtual meeting, and I believe that means we will be trying to live stream this as well to get it to as broad a possible audience as we can get. Is that correct, Mr. Burke? We are proposing to live stream it, whether it's this week or the following?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. So it's a bit of a checkpoint on all that's happened and where we intend to go and how we intend to get there. And council has some significant decisions to make about perhaps reallocating some of the funds and for what purposes and how that will all work out in the next coming weeks and months. So hopefully we'll get you some indication of what tomorrow as to whether it's going to be next week or the week after, probably. We'll see. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the CAO report? Okay, we move then to finance and admin. Liaison councillor, who's speaking first?
That'd be Councillor Tower, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. The bills and payroll is on page 19 and 20. And before I make a motion, I would ask our treasurer to make some comments towards it, please.
Thank you, Councillor Tower, Your Worship. So on page 19 is the accounts payable report for the month. Within general government, utility government, there were a large number of debenture payments for the month of May 2020. And as well, there were some expenses that happened in April. If you recall, the last cutoff was to April 24th. So there's 1 week of payments made in April, plus the balance for May. Overall, our bills are down, but now that we're moving into the summer month, crews are back to work, and students are coming on board as well. Then we will be paying more bills, of course. But the biggest portion of general government and utility government would be the monthly debenture, Outside of that, your normal power bills and other bills that we would normally pay. General capital, the larger items in there would be the fire department items purchased, and utility capital, just a small bill payment for the month of May. The payroll report is on page 20, and within that you can see that there was very little overtime during the month for some staff being on call, as some alarms and water main flushing that took place during the month of May.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. I move that council accept the bills and payroll for the month of May 2020 as follows. General government, $646,571.34. General capital, $36,299.04. Utility government, $365,573.96. Utility capital, $517.50, and salaries of $179,352.13.
Moved by Councillor Tower.
Deputy Mayor Aiken, I'll second that.
Thank you. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried.
Okay, now the finance report itself is on pages 20 through 26. The financial statements are included to the end of May 2020. And we are currently reviewing the effects of COVID-19 on our operations and capital budget, and will provide a full update on analysis in the near future. At this point, everything seems to be relatively on track, except for COVID-19 related items. Capital budgets are being awarded and most are falling within budget allocations. Audit work continued in May and will continue through June, but has been delayed as a result of the pandemic. We are currently attempting to finalize for the July special council meeting. The debenture in the amount of $340,000 for 2019 borrowing and renewal of the 20-year debenture with a 10-year original term was completed on May 25th, 2020. Water bills for the period of January through to March 2020 went out on May 15th, 2020 and have a 60-day due date. And seniors discount date rather than the normal 30 days. The bills will be due on July 14, 2020. Prepayment of services, for example, any new services, turn on, off, culverts, which had been previously suspended are now resumed. Lawrence Street Phase 2 final claim submission took place in late May. In early June, we submitted Schedule F of the agreement, which signifies a project completion. Town Hall has reopened to public during May. Several changes were required as a result of the COVID-19. The issuance of dog tags for the year of 2020 has been suspended. On May 29th, the sale of tags has been resumed. A mail drop was put in the people's mailbox advising of this. The due date without late fee charges is now July 31st of 2020. Proof of rabies will be required. That is the financial part of it. And under bylaws, the information for bylaws is bylaws officer report is on page 27, presented by Paul Emery, includes April and May in the report on statistics during his time filling in for Corey through April and May. We are looking to hire bylaw students beginning late June. This process has begun and will be updated further once completed. And there will also be a motion coming forward for a donation to Hospice Southeast New Brunswick Celebration Campaign. That information was presented in the June discussion meeting, June 1st one. And so that will be coming along later. If someone wants to give some information at that time, be great. And that is my report so far.
Thank you, Councillor Tower. On one of the items that that I think causes some people confusion is the $40,000 savings and the ability that while that puts money back in people's pocket, there's an implication for the reserve fund for the utility. And I just wonder if I could ask Mr. Beal to speak to that.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So that question was actually asked today. The money that we had given back through the $20, not charging the $20 for the sewer treatment, that money would have gone into the Utility Capital Reserve Fund, which was being set aside for future sewage lagoon upgrades that will be required before 2040. So it was felt that with COVID-19 and the struggles people would be having during the initial stages of the pandemic, that putting money for future planning should be set aside for at least part of 2020. There may be other struggles throughout the year in the utility. For example, the university not running will result in potentially significantly lower bills for the next quarter and potentially each of the quarters moving forward. So we aren't sure. We weren't sure that we could do that for a whole year, but felt that we could do it for at least the first quarter and of the year. The question was raised as to why that wouldn't potentially come from other areas. Other areas like the dog park and things, those are general capital items. So the utility budget is a completely separate budget, and anything we do within the water and sewer budget has to come from the water and sewer budget. So giving back the $20 sewer treatment charge, not billing that for the first quarter, was about $40,000 back into the residents and businesses' pockets, and that represents 2% of our total utility budget. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but it is significant in the utility budget when there is a lot of fixed cost. But we can't fund that out of the general budget, which has everything that happens with our tax base.
Right. Municipal budgeting is based upon that distinction, and of course, we didn't know about a pandemic coming when we approved that budget, and we have to make some of those decisions as they come up, right? So thank you, Mr. Beal. Any other questions on the report for Councillor Tower?
Your Worship, Councillor Michel here.
Sure, thank you, Councillor.
You mentioned municipal budgeting. We've received some information that the timelines around municipal budgeting are changing for next year, and I'm just kind of wondering what effect that has on us. I know that we've kind of had a certain process that we've used in the past. I'm just kind of wondering if we're looking at starting that process earlier now, because I believe it's mid-November that the local government department is looking for that information from us.
Mr. Burke, would you respond to that, or is that Mr. Beal?
Beal.
Your Worship, I'd asked our treasurer to provide an update. He gave a thorough overview at our liaison council meeting last week.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So the information has come out, and I was going to put that in my June report because it did come out shortly after this. The report was actually already created, but to answer the question is we already started our process in September. We have planning sessions that are undertaken. Then in September, managers are required to submit estimates as well as budgets. We begin the process, our own process, in October by submitting a first draft to council. And as most councillors will recall, we're usually at that point waiting for information from the province after we present first draft. So I believe that our schedule may need to be adjusted slightly, but not significantly, because it will actually be better for the town of Sackville getting that information earlier based on our current schedule, whereby we may have that information as we present first draft or very shortly after first draft, where we can get the second draft and completion moved through the process. So if if it comes late October. The unfortunate part is they will want the budgets passed and submitted by the end of November. Our council meetings are early November, so we may need to pass the budget motions at the special council meeting, which is a budget meeting, rather than wait, because we won't be able to wait till this December, which we normally could. So as far as our timelines go in our process, it may have a very small change of timeline, but nothing significant. And we will welcome the opportunity to get our information from the province much sooner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that summary, Mr. Beal. As usual, very detailed, but succinct.
No other questions?
You are looking at, you have done motion number 1. Are you now looking for hospice?
I am now, that is correct, Your Worship. I move that council join the Hospice Southeast New Brunswick Celebration Campaign with a pledge of $9,700. The total amount to be contributed in 2020, 21, and or 22 at the discretion of the treasurer, feeling that maybe we should hold back a little. And after we get a second, I would like either the treasurer or Mr. Burke to follow up.
Councillor Evans, I'd be happy to second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. We will look for staff. I will remind you that council did deal with this, had a presentation to council late last year, or early this in January, I believe it was. Maybe anyway, it was Tammy Ramperso, who we all know from UMNB, who gave a presentation outside of her role as a Riverview councillor and provided the background to a regional campaign for all local governments to get a formula-based contribution to a regional hospice, which we do not have. We heard that presentation, and within a day or two, we got a formal letter from the auxiliary of the hospital, I believe it was, asking us to hold off on any decision, as they were considering some investment in the hospital at that time that might include palliative care as well. We wrote back and said, we'd welcome you to come to council and let us know what your plans were. And that never did happen. And in follow-up to the question, it became apparent that the auxiliary's executive changed over the period of time. They made a decision about what they wanted to do, but didn't communicate it back to us, had made a decision that they were not going to invest in palliative care and that they would support a donation to the hospice, but did not communicate it to us. We then raised that issue with the new executive, and they were unclear what had happened and came back with some of that line of history and an apology that we were not advised of what their decision had been made. So now it's back to where it was before. We had delayed it because of local questions and concerns, and we are now back to looking at the amount of money that was originally requested. And the suggestion, as it lays in the motion, is that it be split in two, which is perfectly acceptable to the hospice, as it will take some time to build anyway. I don't know if Mr. Burke or Mr. Beal would like to lay in any extra onto that.
Yeah, Your Worship, I can just speak from the financial perspective. We looked at over 2 years or over 1 year, over 3 years. We would ideally like to proceed with the donation up front in 2020. But not knowing where our financial picture takes us and where things go right now, we felt that the motion wording this way would give us the flexibility to either pay it all in 2020 or prepare budget accordingly and pay it up to over 3 years, whereby we would either pay it all $9,700 this year, we would pay it a little over $3,000 over 3 years, or we could hold off and pay 2021 and 2022 about $4,800.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other?
Your Worship, Councillor Michaud?
Yep.
Just under the motion, I guess I've been struggling with this, I guess, and I understand the importance of the hospice and palliative care, and you know, I think as a community we should be striving actually for that type of service to be happening within our community. In fact, even to the point where, you know, of recent months, knowing of people receiving palliative care at home. And having a palliative care unit here already, you know, I would sooner see us invest our money as our taxpayers, our residents' money into expanding upon that as opposed to going regional. I know, you know, through the editorial that you had submitted to the Times and Transcript a few weeks ago, you know, urging to revisit the proposed health summit and solution-based integrated public health system. You know, I think that system needs to address palliative care as well. You know, you referenced about how local volunteers have played a key role with our current situation, and they continue or have in the past played a key role. And I really struggle with the fact that we're going to send this money to a centralized kind of approach to hospice care where we're struggling right now to even maintain our own hospital. And I would sooner see us invest that money locally in a palliative unit extension. Thank you.
Yes, Your Worship, if I may, Councillor O'Neill.
Please.
I'll be voting against this motion due to the fact that I've heard many seniors say that they would really have a problem with having a loved one put in a palliative care home in Moncton. And I'm the same as Councillor Michaud. I feel that money that we have, especially at this time, should be held until we find out where our hospital is going and where things stand with us here in our own area.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I will note that the auxiliary did advise us that they were encouraging a donation to the hospice, and I believe you heard that as well from the local body that is working on palliative care. So I accept, certainly understand the councillors' positions. I just wanted to be sure that we all understood both of them had recommended this. So is there any questions or comments on this?
Your Worship, Councillor Tower, I understand where those comments are coming from, but I also know that we have our palliative care here and they're not ready to expand it at this time. And I understand some of the reasons why they don't. And where we have their support, I think it's important that we at least give another avenue for palliative care, which will allow some of the SACA who may need it to do it. And it also shows our partnership in the region, which is also important for us to do. If we have their support at this time, then let's go forward with this one. And if it gets to a point where we can expand ours, I'm sure that we and the town will step up behind it. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other councillors that would like to weigh in on this? Hearing none, should I motion? Question, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
And that is Councillor Michaud and Councillor O'Neill. Was there a third in there? No. So the motion is carried. Please note that Councillor Michaud and O'Neill were nay. Thank you. One last question in the bylaw package. There was a question about one of the commentaries in, someone had raised a question about how parking was cited in the report. Mr. Beale, are you able to speak to that? I'm not sure if you've seen that question or not.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I have. Sorry, I was just making sure I was off mute. I have, and so the question was raised as to whether The wording in the current bylaw officer report talks about left wheels to curb. And the question was, what bylaw infraction is this? And whether we have authority to issue verbal warnings with this. So the actual left wheels to curb is reference to past bylaw reports, which indicate that a vehicle is parked in the opposite direction with their vehicle facing the direction of traffic. So this is in our street traffic bylaw, has always been enforced, and will continue to be enforced through the bylaw. It's just completely a difference in terminology by two different employees, with the current contract employee using his former policing terminology rather than the current bylaw terminology. So it's strictly a terminology thing, but it does mean that the vehicle is traveling on Main Street, for example, and has parked on the left side of the street facing the direction of traffic, which is illegal in our current street traffic bylaw.
Okay. Thank you for that. That makes much more sense. Any questions on that reply there? Okay. Thank you for that. Any other, Councillor Tower, any other additions to your presentation? You're muted, Mike.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute and it didn't want to do it. It wanted to shut me up. I have nothing else from the finance, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll move to, we have both motions that are carried. We'll move to tourism and business development then, please. Councillor Tower or Councillor Michaud?
Councillor Tower, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
The report is on page 30 and 31. After very careful consideration, we have decided to open the BIC on June 15th to support local businesses. We are developing a detailed operation plan and will be following all the necessary COVID-19 related restrictions and protocols. The craft gallery has indicated they will not open any earlier than September 1st, and we will follow up with a future discussion on that. Our new promotional video, When the Time is Right, considers Sackville, New Brunswick, which encourages people to visit the town and when they are ready, and has been received very well, and has also been seen over 40,000 views in Facebook. We are now working on a second video, which will be a theme on the idea of considering Sackville as the first place you visit when you travel. We're including this on the province's hashtag staycation, there we go, promotions. We continue to work on capital signs upgrades, and now that the sign shops are returning to full force, we anticipate work soon on the waterfowl park and the town's wayfinding signs and the old Chamber of Commerce signs. We are excited to announce that the province has finally approved EV charger signs on our highway signs, and they should be installed soon. Sackville visitor guides, English and French, are now in hand. The English version is now online also. We'll be distributing them where possible in the town and throughout the province. We continue to monitor the COVID-19 situation as it pertains to our local businesses and residents. And we have several material on our website now with information for local businesses about their hours, their service, possible special programs such as the open hours, hours for seniors only, delivery, etc. And then we also have a list of canceled or postponed events, and it is updated on our homepage regularly, which the residents can find at our website. And we also have a list of resources for individuals and businesses, which we also are updating regularly, and it can also be found on our website under the sackville.com/2020, and help for businesses or updates. It's all on there to help our citizens out. We continue to monitor and discuss traffic in the waterfowl park, but overall things seem to be working very well. The manager also joined the Tanimar COVID Task Force group on economic and business impact action, and is participating in weekly meetings with managers at Mount Allison University. In addition, along with Matt Pride and Jamie Burke, we're having our weekly online meetings with local businesses to discuss ideas, needs, and initiatives. We are developing a new Sackville.com Explore landing page, which will include visitors' experiences that are possible for this summer, including some suggestion itineraries, walking tours, and links to our local accommodations, tourism-related businesses, restaurants. We are working on final revisions of the marketing plan, and it will be presented in the July council meeting. The manager assisted in assembling the town's 2019 annual report. It is available now at our website, and the annual report is required by the Local Governance Act. The manager has participated in many webinars and web meetings over the past month, including the TIA-NB peer-to-peer chat, the Cumberland COVID-19 Q&A panel, and a Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce COVID-19 survey results on purchasing, travel, economic confidence, and touring points, recovery, and reimagination in New Brunswick webinar, among others. And when I finish the next paragraph, I would like Ron Carroll Spurls to do a follow-up on that last paragraph where he's participated in these webinars. And also the department is collaborating on several initiatives to support local business, including Shop Local Passport, things to liven up our downtown, such as placement of the outdoor patio piano and various street performers, and other ways to promote shopping for our local businesses. These details will be coming in future months. So Mr. Spurls, if you could fill in that last paragraph.
Thank you, Your Worship, Councillor Towler, and other councillors. Sure, I'll just speak briefly. It's really encouraging and kind of invigorating to see all the different sorts of resources that are made available to people. There literally are probably 2 or 3 relevant webinars that come up almost every day that I could watch, or I could pass on information. So have to be a little bit selective because it can take quite a bit of time. But I'm trying to watch things where I think, or participate in things where I think I might be able to communicate some of the interests of the town or some of the concerns of the town, or where I may be able to get information that's useful to us, or that may be things we can also, of course, then pass along to local businesses or local residents. So I've been, those are just an example of some of the things that I've participated in. It's good also, I'm sure probably a lot of people feel this way, to find people who are in similar circumstances to you, who are going through the same sorts of things that you're working through, and can help you to find ways to be productive and to work forward as well. So if anybody has any particular questions about particular webinars, I'd be glad to answer them. But also maybe when we're offline, if anybody wants to shoot me an email or a message, I'd be glad to expand on any details from any of those. But I have tried to generally pass on any relevant information that I found in them through appropriate channels.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Spurls. And that is all from me, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Tower. Are there any other councillor questions on the report? Some of the COVID measures will be a little bit clearer when we do have that special meeting where we discuss some of the more specific items and some of the resource implications of some of them. So good to get an oversight right now, and when we next meet, we should get down into the details of all of them. Okay, you have no motions, Councillor Tower, for this one. So if that's it, no questions, we can move to public properties and facilities. This one is not going to be led by Mr. Tower. I presume it's Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I'll give Councillor Tower a break. Okay, the engineering public works part of the report. McDonald Paving and Construction Limited started patching program for 2020 on May 19th and will continue throughout the months of June and July, or until all patching is completed. Public Works staff conducted the installation of several driveway culvert extensions that were required throughout the town during the month of May. Public Works staff started the line painting for crosswalks, park space, and directional arrows. Public Works Department completed the replacement of a couple of collapsed road culverts on Pond Shore Road and Church Street. Utility Department completed unidirectional flushing program, as well as all private hydrants throughout the months of May. We'd like to thank the residents of Sackville who may have been affected by this annual maintenance program for their patience and understanding. The Engineering Department has been working with CBCL Engineering Limited on the design drawings for the Milner Avenue reconstruction project. Tender 2020-05 for one new, not previously used, current model 2020 or 2021 hydraulic wheel excavator was issued on May 6th and closed on May 27th. 6 tender bids were received. Tenders were evaluated, and details of the tender bids, along with the recommendation, was presented to council during the special council meeting on June 1st. And there will be a motion coming forward after this report. Tender 2020-09 Sackville Waterfowl Park Boardwalk Bridge Replacement was issued on May 8th and closed on May 26th. 1 tender bid was received. The tender was evaluated, and details of the tender bid along with a recommendation were presented to council during the same special council meeting on June 1st. And there will be a motion coming forward tonight as well. The Tantramar Veterans Memorial Civic Center staff have switched to park duties for the next several months. And when it comes to municipal parks, the parks continue to be monitored 7 days a week by park staff. Staff are working on an operational plan to open public washrooms in Bill Johnstone Park, the Waterfowl Park, and Beach Hill Park, making public safety and cleanliness a priority. A reminder that the walking trails are one-way on most of the trails in the Waterfowl Park and two-way traffic where the trails are wide enough to comply with physical distancing. The CN tree program is now complete, with 100 trees having been planted, as well as 2 additional trees that Riverview Lawn and Garden threw in as a thank you to the town. The flower baskets, beds, and planters will be arriving mid-June, and staff look forward to welcoming students back to our crews in the next couple of weeks. And that's the report.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I do note that CN annual report had a photo of the announcement of the Tree Legacy program here, which included a variety of people from CN and the town, and made our contribution was that photo in their national annual report. So
cool. Okay.
I don't think you're in the photo, Bill.
No, that's why it's such a good photo. If there are no questions, I will read my motions, but I await your direction.
I'm not seeing any questions. Any questions for Councillor on the report? Please go ahead with your motion.
I move that council award tender number 2020-05, new model 2020 or 2021 hydraulic wheeled excavator to the lowest bidder, Paul Equipment and Sons, 2008 of Fredericton, New Brunswick, in the amount of $387,061.12, HST included.
Moved by Councillor Evans.
Deputy Mayor Aiken, I'll second that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Question?
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. Councillor Evans.
I move that council award tender number 2020-09, Sackville Waterfowl Park Boardwalk Bridge Replacement to the lowest bidder, Sackville General Contracting Limited, in the amount of $45,701, HST included.
Councillor Tower, I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Councillor Tower.
Just a comment, both of these came in essentially on budget. They're previously budgeted, and it's we're just approving it. I just thought I'd make mention of that.
Thank you. Question?
I have a question, Your Worship. Councillor Michaud here. I know we covered this off at the special council meeting, and the fact that we only received one bid in regards to this work, and the information that had been shared at that time is that some contractors find it difficult to work within those things such as bid bonds in order to secure the opportunity to bid. I'm just kind of wondering if there's any type of things that the municipality can be doing that can kind of ease that somewhat, so that we maybe get the opportunity for some other contractors to bid on this without it being a financial, maybe a financial strain for them to meet those requirements.
Good question. Is there a blockage that we might be able to loosen up? Would I look to Mr. Acton? Could you speak to that? Is there regulatory elements that we could perhaps seek out to loosen for this?
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. That's something that I would have to look into, because obviously bonds and certified checks are, as I had indicated last Monday night, are put there for a reason. In the event that the low bidder decides to back out, then all of a sudden now we're obliged to go to the second bidder, and obviously that second bidder is higher than the low bidder. So now the town is out that much money, and that was the reason for that. So we'd have to look at the bidding process, and we'd have to look at possibly not doing an actual tender. It might be a request for quotations. But again, it eliminates all that security and the legality of putting a project like that out to tender.
Okay.
I'd just like to make the point that the vendors would not be out of pocket. They would get the money back if they're well, actually, they get their money back in any case, right? This is just something that is protecting our interests. We're looking out for our constituents to make sure that we don't get stiffed by the process. So it's important to realize it's a balancing act. It's not just a one-sided thing. We're not being unreasonable. This is a common practice. I think there were other reasons why we only got the one bid. We got 6 bids for the other one. So there are lots of factors involved.
I think it might be worthwhile, the liaison councillors, for that, just to have that discussion at some point over whether, which are regulatory requirements and which are ones that are the town is in charge of because we needed it for those reasons, and bring that kind of a summary explanation back at some point. I think that would be really helpful.
We can definitely do that, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Did we have a seconder on that? We did we not?
Yeah, Councillor Power, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. So are there any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion is carried.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much. We move on to recreation programs and events. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Your Worship. Brianna McLeod has been hired as a summer student through the Future Ready New Brunswick program, and she'll be working with us as the climate change awareness coordinator throughout the summer. She'll be organizing virtual workshops, helping develop policy, reviewing our programs and events procedures from a climate lens, etc. The department has hired 9 summer students, 4 of whom will be providing lifeguarding services at the Lilas Fawcett Park, with the remaining 5 students providing programming opportunities for children and families that fall within the guidelines outlined by the province, including sanitation requirements. The department has been working with the Tandemar and St. Antoine pickleball groups to install permanent courts at the Bill Johnson Memorial Park, and I will have a motion for this at the end of my report. The department will be celebrating National Indigenous Peoples Day on June the 21st, 2020, by including various activities on our social media pages throughout the day. A full schedule will be made available soon. Town staff continue to find innovative ways to offer programming opportunities for our residents. For example, a geocaching course has been set up at Beach Hill Park, and the program coordinator has been creating baking videos with her favorite recipes. All town-operated events that have the potential to create a gathering of 50 or more people have been canceled for the remainder of 2020. Unfortunately, this includes the popular Sackville Street Chalk Festival, the 20th Sackville Fall Fair. Staff are looking at different ways to still recognize these events without operating outside the provincial order. Summer will be starting in June, and lifeguarding will be offered at Lyles Fawcett Park this summer. Summer programming will look very different this year, but staff are confident that some in-person programming for children will be made available while ensuring strict adherence to provincial requirements. Canada Day will be offered virtually this year and will include a speech from the mayor, our Canadian flag raising and national anthem, a video on how to make gourmet Canada Day cupcakes, the Facebook Live Canada Day craft, a music video completion of well-known local fiddle players performing Red Wing, and possibly a few surprises. Sackville again are encouraged to make some noise on a weekly initiative to thank our frontline workers for the amazing jobs they are doing to keep our town and province moving forward during the pandemic. Everybody's encouraged at 7 p.m. every Wednesday night for residents to head outside, cheer loudly, honk your horns or bang pots and pans to say thank you to those putting their lives at risk every day so that we can continue to have the essentials we need. The department has been assisting the Tanimar COVID-19 task force and has joined both the mental health and physical health action groups. In the library report, the library reopened to the public on June the 4th. There are various new requirements, including limited hours, no computer access, social distancing, and so on. For more information, visit the library's Facebook or call them at 364-4915.
Any questions on the report?
Your Worship, Councillor Michaud here.
Yep.
I guess in regards to, and it's come up in a couple other reports, just the bringing back of summer students. You know, when you look at some of the work that can be done, anybody in the grounds crew, I mean, social distancing is possible. I'm just kind of wondering when it comes to places like Lyles Fawcett Park and lifeguarding, what type of measures we're going to be able to implement. You know, on a good day in the summertime, that park is packed full, and I'm just kind of wondering, by offering that type of service this year, what type of risks that we might be putting ourselves in as a municipality, and to the general public and to our summer students to have to work with those restrictions and enforce those restrictions with people who are coming to the park.
Mr. Burke, we've spent a lot of time on how that could be interpreted. Would you mind? I know we're going to go into some of this detail when we have our special meeting, but I think it'd be useful to have a bit of a background as in response to Councillor Michaud's questions.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Worship, and thank you, Councillor Michaud, for the question. I guess we're gonna do our best to manage it. To be completely honest, I mean, we know that residents are looking for us to get back to our various service delivery areas, and I guess the question that our management team has been working very diligently on is, you know, how do we do that safely, and you know, ensuring that our summer student workforce is, like the rest of our workforce, going to be well prepared, educated, and safe. So all of our student recruitment includes a thorough onboarding program where they're briefed on not just our standard workplace procedures, but now our new COVID-19 operational plan. That's a requirement and responsibility for us. So kind of on the whole kind of policing or enforcement side of things, I guess this is something that I've been discussing with my colleagues in other communities. And you know, we're not in the enforcing family business. You know, it's we understand there's challenges there, but it's next to impossible for us to determine who's related to who and who's living with who and who's in whose bubble. What we're going to do is we're going to do our very best to ensure that social distancing is maintained, but that people can still go out and enjoy our public spaces, including Lillis Fawcett Park. I know Mr. Pride has talked to all of the lifeguards individually, and he's been in contact with their guardians as well to ensure that they are comfortable and confident in their abilities as we look to reopen the beach. And you know, they are guards, they're there to save people's lives, so there may be a circumstance where they need to put their life-saving skills in action. So Mr. Pride's been having that conversation with each one of them individually. So signs will be posted in all our facilities, encouraging people to you know, follow the rules, and we'll do our best. But we're not looking for our summer students to be enforcement officers. Instead, we're going to ask them to be ambassadors and kind of help spread positive messaging amongst the community about the importance to get out, get fresh air, the benefits for that for mental health and physical health, but to do that as safely as they can.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think it's important as we, the measures are changing consistently every week. And on this weekend, it was announced in 48 hours, they changed some of them again. So it's going to be an ongoing understanding of what those rules are and a constant upgrading of the knowledge of our summer student staffs and people who are availing of the facilities. I note, though, just to be clear, that the library sets its own interpretation of internal use of the library. We are responsible for the building, but the library itself is responsible for interpreting the usage of that. So there are a variety of differences as these things unfold. So a little bit more detail when we have our relationship, our special meeting, I think. Everybody's concerned about this. Everybody wants everyone to be healthy. Everybody wants to work to limit the virus. So I think we all have the same objectives. It's a question of how we interpret them and how we maintain them. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Councillor Michaud. Any other questions? If not, I believe there is one motion, Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, Your Worship, I have a motion. I move that Council approve the purchase from Sportsmaster Sports Services for the pickleball court material in the amount of $8,481.25 US, shipping included.
Motion is moved by Councillor O'Neill. Is there a seconder?
Councillor Tower, I'll second that motion.
Beat me to it.
Councillor Tower. Question?
I do have a question, Worship.
Michaud, please.
Thank you. I know it was discussed at the special meeting last week in regards to being volunteers that will conduct this work. I'm just kind of curious as to the liability that the municipality would face with volunteers doing that type of work, and also if the work was done, if there's errors in the work or whatever, the type of liability the town would face in regards to correcting that. I'm also curious if there was any discussion ever with this group, instead of volunteering their hours, if they would actually have contributed some dollars to the project, and in turn it be installed with actual people who are trained to do that type of work.
Mr. Burke, would you prepare a response for that?
Yeah. Thank you, Worship, and thank you again, Councillor Michaud. So I guess to answer the first part of your question, the volunteers who undertake the work for us, they will fall under our the town's insurance coverage. You know, rest assured that we will also have some of our senior staff out there supervising and assisting, so they won't be left on their own to undertake the installation without some guidance by you know, Mr. Cole, Mr. McLean, and Mr. Acton. So we will have kind of boots on the ground assisting with the install. You know, I'll get Mr. Pride to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't recall there ever being a request, I guess, from the local. I'm not sure what their correct terminology is. If it's pickleballers, I don't think we ever went out and asked them if they were interested in contributing. I guess we've, you know, we heard a very detailed presentation request from them on the importance of this this sport to their active lifestyle. And I guess we stepped up and made that a capital request to council. Council graciously set aside the money, and then our staff went out and secured some money to offset some of the cost on the installation itself. So we're quite pleased to have volunteers step up and help when we can. We're certainly not expecting them to do all the work and the research. That's what our staff are there to help with. But I don't think, Councillor, we ever expected them to contribute financially or do any type of fundraising. Had the cost been substantial or outside of our own means to be able to make the project work, and without the ability to locate some grants to assist, that could have been something that we may very well have needed to explore. But fortunately, in this case, we didn't have to do that.
Can I follow up on that? Bill Evans here, Councillor Evans.
Yes, please.
This is a subject that comes up regularly, where the suggestion that we get people to pay for a service or infrastructure we're providing if it happens to be near or benefit a particular group of people. And I want to speak against this idea in general. Again, we provide services for all our citizens who want to avail themselves to them. And lots of people don't take advantage of Lillis Fawcett Park, and we pay for it with tax dollars. And the same thing about sidewalks and various other things, is that we collectively provide services and infrastructures for all our citizens who want to take or do take advantage of them. And I want to speak against this idea of suggesting that individual groups, because they seem to be benefiting from a particular one, be expected or asked to contribute to doing it. That's not how we do stuff. So I'll speak to that now. And again,
Your Worship, I want to clarify my question. I did not suggest that they do this. What I was looking to clarify here was the fact that we're asking, our volunteers have stepped up to do installation, and my concern was the fact of the liability around that and the liability to the municipality in regards to if the installation was done correctly. And all I was indicating was the fact that was the suggestion made that, if the group had funding available, would they make it available so that the work would be done not by volunteers, but by people who are trained to do the work? That's what I was looking for clarification on.
Okay. And did you get that clarification, Councillor Michaud?
I did, to somewhat, but I just wanted to point out that I'm not expecting people to contribute. What I am is I'm just asking. My concern was around having volunteers do this work.
I heard that, but I believe I also heard you say, were they at, we can watch this video when we're done, but my recollection was Councillor Michaud asked if they had been asked to contribute. And that's what I was speaking against. If I misheard him, then I am obviously not speaking against what he said, and I will apologize. But that was my understanding of part of what he said.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other councillors that have a question on this motion? I'll call the question then. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Just before we go ahead, I realized that there was a question on tenders that I wanted to raise. It came from the Southeast Regional Service Commission, who hadn't done tenders for a couple of months. They had delayed all their meetings, and we had 6 tenders at once, and it became clear that people were working now quickly to try to catch up. We had a couple of tenders last meeting. We had a couple more today. Councillor, Mr. Acton, maybe you could clarify where we stand in terms of the litany of tenders that we know that you've been working on. Just give us a bit of a background on where those stand.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. So as the Worship had mentioned, there's a number of tenders that we've issued. Council has voted on those, and again, 2 more tonight. We are working on Milner Avenue reconstruction, which again, I think in the council report mentions we're hoping to have that out to tender probably this week, actually, and we'll be coming back in front of council likely in the next council meeting in July. We are also working on the Cattail Ridge, the exit 506 improvements. Again, we're working on that tender, and that is another one that we hope to have out soon. We've got to finish up the construction drawings. We're working with DTI because that's a project that has to be approved by DTI. So once the tender package is ready to go, we have to get their review and approval on that. So we're working with them to get that done, and then we'll be going to tender on that. That will be likely at the August council meeting, and that project will proceed anytime thereafter, August, September into October. So that's a fall project. And I'm also working on several other tenders. The generator project for the backup generator to the Tantramar Veteran Memorial Civic Center is another one that I'm working on, plus the generator for the Public Works and Lift Station project, as well as the Tantramar Veterans Memorial Civic Center signboard tender. So yes, we are working on a number of those tenders, lots of work there to do. And we're trying to get those done as quickly as we can, and we're definitely in good shape to get these projects done by year end.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Sorry to go out of order there. Could we move on to public safety?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the report for the fire department found on page 37 of our package. Saco Fire and Rescue responded to 6 calls for service in the month of May, which included 1 commercial fire alarm, 1 residential fire alarm, 1 utility pole fire, 1 rubbish fire, 1 motor vehicle collision, and 1 call for assistance from Ambulance New Brunswick. The calls for service in May 2020 were down by 7 calls compared to the same time frame in 2019. Weekly training has resumed and members are looking forward to getting back into a regular routine. However, training certainly looks a little different due to the pandemic, and they are following the guidelines that have been developed by the Fire Marshal's Office in conjunction with Works Safe New Brunswick. Due to the unprecedented time of COVID, the fire department has made the difficult but necessary decision to cancel their 15th annual truck draw fundraiser this year. As a department, they feel this is the best interest of their members and the citizens. They are truly grateful for the overwhelming support of our community. If you have already purchased a 2020 truck draw ticket or became a sponsor, members of the truck draw committee will be in contact with you over the next few weeks to issue a full refund. They thank you for your support and understanding, and are hopeful that they will be able to resume their annual truck draw next year in 2021. There will be 3 motions coming forward at the end of this report. One is for personal protective equipment replacement, which is bunker gear and firefighting boots. The second one will be wildland personal protective equipment replacement, which is coveralls. And the third is a training facility, purchasing 4 40-foot sea containers for their new training facility behind the Public Works building. Just a reminder, under the Fire Prevention Bylaw, Section 3, rubbish fires are strictly prohibited within the town limits, and they remind all the citizens that when having outside fires, they must use an outdoor wood-burning appliance, which is manufactured, non-combustible enclosed container designed to hold a small fire. And the chief, as usual, always reminds everyone to have a 72-hour emergency kit ready if it's ever needed. And if there's any questions on that, I would ask if you would ask the chief. If not, and when that's done, I have 3 motions.
Councillor Evans, I have a comment. I just want to say, I hope that as we all know, the good works that the fire department does with their truck draw tickets revenue, that people who can will say if they've already purchased a ticket, they will not ask for a refund, but let the fire department do good stuff with the money. So I'm encouraging people to do that if they feel they can afford it.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Any other questions on Councillor Tower, please?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. For the chief, he and I had a conversation, or actually, I guess it was emails back. We were talking about the backyard fires, and can you give me your thoughts, Chief, about the connection of our bylaw to a provincial ban on burning bylaw or order?
Certainly. Thank you, Councillor Tower, Your Worship, members of council. So as I alluded to with Mr. Tower in email correspondence, right now, currently, the town of Sackville has a bylaw number 247 that permits our residents to have outdoor fires as long as they're compliant with section 3 of the bylaw. However, the province puts out a burn ban or a map, a colored map every day at 2 p.m., letting residents and citizens of our communities know what can or cannot happen. This being said, currently, several municipalities are exempt from that, and they have their own bylaws in place that govern such. However, we are working on our bylaw right now to make revisions to that. Similar to Riverview has just made a change in their bylaw, so when DNR puts out a policy stating that the province is red, there's no burning within inside the municipality either, and we in Sackville are looking to do that also.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chief.
Okay, that's good clarification. Thanks for that. Okay, Councillor O'Neill, you wish to move to police?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll give the motions for the fire department, and then Councillor Butcher will do the police one.
Okay, thank you.
I move that council approve the purchase of 5 sets of Starfield Lion bunker gear and 5 sets of Hague's firefighting boots from Micmac Fire and Safety Source Limited in the amount of $19,187.75, HST included.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill.
Councillor Butcher, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Butcher. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council approve the purchase of 43 sets of wildland PPE replacement gear, which are coveralls, from Cummings Fire and Safety Equipment Limited in the amount of $21,708.55, HST included.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill.
Councillor Tower, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Tower. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor O'Neill again.
Thank you. I move that council approve the purchase of 4 sea containers from Riverside Warehousing Limited in the amount of $16,560, HST and shipping included. This being covered through the $20,000 donation from Sackville Volunteer Firefighters Association.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill.
Councillor Butcher, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Butcher. Question?
Question.
Under the question, Your Worship, Councillor Michaud.
Yes.
Just wanted to say that congratulate the association with taking this initiative, and I would like to encourage them to continue on this way. We've been very lucky as a municipality in recent years to be able to continue to support and ensure our firefighters have the best equipment. I know that wasn't always the case, and with the uncertainties surrounding COVID-19 and our economic situation, we're not sure what we're going to face, but congratulations, kudos to this group, and I just want to encourage that continuation of working towards these type of initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Yes, we've been very lucky. Any other questions on that? If not,
Question.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. We're moving to Councillor Butcher for
Yes.
police, please.
Thank you. On Operations in the month of May was consistent with the last few months in terms of the number of calls for service. However, there have been some changes in the nature of the calls. There were far fewer thefts and fraud investigations this past month. Related to the COVID-19 Emergency Measures Act order, there were several calls and self-generated investigations. We are still educating, reminding, and at times charging folks with the EMA order is contravened. Generally, our interventions have been accepted well and with understanding. With increased patrols, there was an increase in traffic violations and warnings, and the bulk of the charges were speeding offenses. There were also some suspended drivers charged as well. There have been many complaints of off-road vehicle traffic within and outside town limits. This is mostly attributed to the time of year. We've been in contact with partner agencies to monitor this area, and some operations have already been conducted, which had both educational and enforcement aspects. And in administration, interviews were conducted in the hiring process of the new community programs officer, which is exciting. News should be coming fairly soon as to the selection and a time for this person to start. As of April 1st, we've had a vacancy in this provincial position. This is going to be filled with a new member whose transfer is delayed until the end of July. And that's my report.
Any questions on the policing report? Good news about the CPO. That'll be excellent. Thank you. Hearing no questions, thank you very much, Councillor Butcher. We will move now to policy bylaw. I would like to note that staff member Becky Goodwin, the assistant clerk, has left the meeting for conflict of interest, potential conflict of interest purposes. So let the record note that she has left the meeting, and we will move to who's speaking first? Councillor Black, Councillor Butcher?
Councillor Black.
Okay, Councillor Black.
Thank you. The policy and bylaw report is on page 39 in the package. The policy bylaw liaison group met through Microsoft Teams on May 20th, 2020. Bylaw number 262, the street traffic bylaw, received third and final reading at the May 4th, 2020 regular council meeting. Bylaw number 274, a bylaw to regulate and license the owners and operators of taxi cabs, was reviewed. The changes and housekeeping items throughout the bylaw were discussed. This bylaw will be brought forward at the regular council meeting scheduled for tonight. The clerk's office attended 2 tender openings during the month of May. Tender number 2020-05 hydraulic wheel excavator and tender number 2020-09 Waterfowl Park Boardwalk Bridge replacement. These 2 tenders were brought forward this evening. Once bylaws receive third and final reading, they are downloaded to our Microsoft corporate site, added to the town's website, and hard copies provided to the front desk for distribution in the event a resident makes a request. The clerk's office continues to monitor all material provided from the province regarding COVID-19. The clerk's office updates staff with the information provided, especially in areas relevant to the municipality. The town's operational plan is kept up to date, and any changes required are made on an ongoing basis. All internal meetings during the month of May have been done through Microsoft Teams. And that's the end of the report, and I do have a motion as well.
Right, and I'm not sure if we can reply to this, but at the discussion meeting, there was a question of whether the taxi cab companies were to be advised of this draft. Do we know if that went out prior to tonight? Mr.
It was sent out just after the meeting last week.
So they've been advised. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions on the report? Hearing none, you have a motion, Councillor Black?
Yes, I do. I move that council give first reading in name only to bylaw number 274, a bylaw to regulate and license the owners and operators of taxi cabs within the town of Sackville.
Moved by Councillor Black.
Councillor Butcher, I will second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Butcher. Any question?
I have a question, Your Worship. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just as a follow-up to our special meeting last week, I'm just kind of wondering if there's been any clarification in Section 8, where Section 8B indicates about special permission requesting, the pickup of and unloading of passengers in Sackville, but we've specifically included rural rides, Tantramar in C. And I'm just kind of wondering if there's been clarification on that as of yet, if they're picking up in town and dropping off in town, or if they're, or why they wouldn't be just incorporated into B.
Mr. Burke, would I ask Ms. Hartling for that, or?
That's correct, Your Worship. Ms. Hartling or Treasurer Michael Deal.
Okay. Ms. Hartling, would you speak to that?
Sure. I have left a message for rural rides in Tantramar, but I have not heard back from them as of yet.
So that's outstanding for the next reading. I would suggest Councillor Michaud. So.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the motion or the draft bylaw? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Black. I believe that's it for you. And we move now to personnel.
Just before we start, I guess Becky's back in. I was just going to say that maybe Becky should come back in, but there she is.
She has just signed back in. Let the record show Ms. Goodwin has signed in with the termination of that topic. Thank you. Councillor Evans, are you speaking, or is Councillor Black?
I think it's me.
That's right. I did it last month.
Okay.
Yep.
Councillor Black.
Thank you. The personnel report is on page 52 of the package. The personnel liaison group met on May 29th, 2020. During the pay periods of April, there were 35 permanent employees and 1 temporary employee. Hiring for the full-time Civic Center attendant has resumed, with interviews being scheduled. The internal posting for Secretary of Engineering and Public Works will be closing on June 3rd, 2020. The job posting for Senior Manager of Corporate Projects has been published with a closing date of July 3rd, 2020. Our summer student hiring has also resumed, and we're very pleased to have them starting over the next few weeks. Students will be actively involved in our orientation program, as well as providing additional resources to all departments around COVID-19 requirements, as we've heard a couple of times tonight. Town Hall is now open to the public between 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. with a variety of COVID-19 procedures and changes. And the recruitment process for the CPO vacancy is currently ongoing. And that's the report.
Questions on the personnel?
I just have one follow-up comment to make fun of myself, that the town hall is open 8:30 to 4:30, Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Any other comments about Councillor Evans? Okay. Thank you. And you have no motion?
I do not.
Okay. Hearing no comments, we will move to Corporate Affairs and Strategic Development.
Thank you, Worship. That would be Councillor Michaud. I'll be giving that report. The report appears on page 53 of the package. Corporate Affairs and Strategic Development Liaison Group met via virtually, I guess, on May 20th. Just a few highlights here. Staff continue to stay informed on the COVID-19 situation with various communications and public service announcements on closures and cancellations, adapted procedures, and various information for the business community. In addition, management continues to meet and evaluate the town's operational plan and other local updates and information pertaining to compliance adherence to the state of emergency. Staff are also participating in EMO teleconference updates with the fire chief. Economic development organizations from across southeast New Brunswick continue to work together on a economic recovery plan as the region slowly emerges from this wave, I guess, of COVID-19 pandemic. The Chamber of Commerce for Greater Moncton and 3Plus Corporation are leading a group of stakeholders that include the City of Moncton, Ville de Dieppe, Town of Riverview, Town of Sackville, Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, Working NB, and Opportunities New Brunswick on the plan. The Southeast Economic Recovery Task Force has been meeting virtually, and it is focused on the gradual resumption of the economy. Recent work includes a request for proposals for a retail service sector assessment and a survey on workplace plans for the remainder of 2020. Staff have been meeting with a variety of local business owner-operators over the last few weeks to discuss local economic recovery efforts. These are informal check-ins and are now scheduled weekly to share ideas and initiatives that are aimed to help local businesses. We continue to work very closely with senior representatives at Mount Allison as they work through their own operational plan, prepare to reopen the campus, and importantly, to welcome back students in the fall. The focus is on student retention and recruitment along with community integration. I'll just touch a little bit that's been mentioned before, the podcasts and webinars taking place with Turning Point on the recovery and reimagination in New Brunswick. They've had 3 so far: Fiscal Realities, Regional Collaboration, and NB Economy. I've managed to attend one of those, and actually they're recorded, and you can go to their website, which is turningpointnb.ca, to either sign up for upcoming webinars or to view the recorded webinars. They've been very informative and some good discussion happening. Portfolio continues to work on the town's new marketing plan. A draft of the plan has now been prepared and under review, and the consultants will be presenting the final document to council in July. Our annual resident survey closed with 259 responses, up from 159 last year. The results have been placed into an infographic, which was included in our June 2020 newsletter. The results are also posted on the town's website and social media platforms, and we're very pleased that 81% of the respondents are satisfied with the quality of life in Sackville. Thank you to everyone who completed the survey. Lastly, we're very pleased to have partnered with Mount Allison Experiential Learning Department and Dr. Michael Fox on an application to the Employer Community Partner Incentive Fund through Future Ready NB. The application was successful and was supported by the Anglophone School District, $40,000, and the Mount Allison Green Investment Fund, $20,000, to help create an Institute for Environment Education, Sustainable Community Development. Future Ready NB has graciously contributed $20,000 to the project, and while the town isn't required to contribute financially, we are very fortunate to be a community partner and will therefore benefit from the mandate and objectives of the program. The partnership will employ an environmental educator, researcher, outreach coordinator, and connect them with a series of Mount Allison student interns. Collaboratively, they will develop an action-based, citizen-driven sustainability communication, education, and action program in cooperation with the university and local schools, local business and landlords, NGOs, and community groups, including the Mayor's Roundtable on climate change. Working with a wide range of community stakeholders, the coordinator will assist teachers, students, business, and civic leaders in working across the community to become places where sustainability is truly embedded through knowledge, engagement, collaboration, and innovation. These experiential learning opportunities are critical to the future New Brunswick workforce, and we are very pleased to have been invited as the community partner. That's the report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Lots of good stuff in there. That relationship with Mount Allison and the sustainability just shows some of the innovation that well, Councillor Michaud, you spoke about before, that there are some lessons we can learn from COVID, and there's new ways for us to do some of these things. And this is going to be an opportunity that when you come to Mount Allison, you also come to a community that's prepared to work with you in experiential learning and give you an opportunity to do it. Plus, we get the benefits of those individuals working in our community on topics that we might not otherwise be able to address. So we call it first-rank academic experience, but also a first-rank community experience that is also academic. So that's what we're talking about. You'll hear a lot more of that kind of a cooperation next week. If we go next week with the Mount Allison, it'll either be on the 15th or the 22nd, and we'll let you know that tomorrow. Any questions on that report for Councillor Michaud or staff? Hearing none, we'll move to new business. And I would just, before we go into the two items there, note that council, I prompted and have received a request from Tantramar Regional High School whether some of the elected officials might volunteer to work with the high school on the graduation functions. I will forward you that message in a bit tonight, perhaps. And what I would suggest is that we consider it all together and perhaps consider who amongst us might want to do that and have one response instead of a variety of little responses. So I'll forward that in the email to you later on tonight or tomorrow morning. Okay, so we'll move to new business. We'll first start with the election of deputy mayor. It's that time of year where council decides on a deputy mayor. And my obligation is to call for nominations, make 3 calls for that. And so I would make a first call. Is there any nominations for deputy mayor?
I would nominate Ron Aiken again as deputy mayor.
Councillor O'Neill nominates Mr. Aiken. I will make a second call. Are there any other nominations for deputy mayor?
I'd like to nominate Sean Michaud. Councillor Tower.
Councillor Tower. Thank you. And for a third and final time, are there any nominations for deputy mayor? Hearing none, then we will cease there. We now have 2 nominations, and typically we ask the person nominated if they would accept it. Ron Aiken, would you accept the nomination for deputy mayor?
Yes, I would accept that, Your Worship.
And Councillor Michaud, will you accept that nomination?
Yes, I will. And thank you, Councillor Tower, for nominating.
Thank you. So we have a vote to be taken, and at this point we'll go in order. Councillor O'Neill's nomination of Councillor Aiken for the position. Can I have I will record this if I can on my list. I will go through the individuals and work up. Councillor Finney is not here. Councillor Butcher, you have a choice between those 2. Councillor Aiken or Councillor Michaud?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. My vote would be for Ron Aiken.
Thank you. Councillor Black, do you have a choice?
I would vote for Ron Aiken as well.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill? You have to vote.
You're muted.
You're still on mute, Grace.
Yes, I vote for Mr. Aiken.
Councillor Evans?
I vote for Ron Aiken.
Thank you. Councillor Michaud?
Not to be self-serving, but I guess I vote for Councillor Michaud.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tower?
I'll vote for Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. And Ron Aiken?
I will be self-serving and vote for myself.
Thank you. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 voting for deputy mayor to be Councillor Ron Aiken. And so Ron Aiken, you are elected as deputy mayor effective immediately.
Congratulations, Ron.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, everybody.
Liaison councillors, this is on because it is that also at this time. My intent is to not make any changes for the same reason as before. In pandemic, we really need people to maintain some expertise in the areas that they're in. and to continue to contribute. And in my view right now that I would want to see some of those things moved about. So I would keep them as they are at this point. Unless there is any council overrides or wishes me to think of something different, please let me know, but that is my intent at this point. Hearing none, that accomplishes our agenda.
Councillor Tower, I move we adjourn.
Councillor Tower moves adjournment. Is there a seconder?
Councillor
Councillor
O'Neill
Misha.
seconds that.
Councillor O'Neill seconds that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. I would note for anyone who is watching this on live stream, if you have questions, please send them to care of the clerk's office, and we will try to get back to you as soon as we can. And thanks again for any technical glitches we might have had. It didn't sound like there were too many today. And we shall see you all in the coming days.